Hi guys, this is Nishant Kotai and you are listening to the NiKo show. Today we are going to talk about one of the best survival horror games, and that is Dead Space Remake. So, we obviously know, all of us know that the Dead Space Remake is a masterpiece. We all agree on that. But today we are going to discuss what exactly makes it a masterpiece and why it is a masterpiece. And if you haven't played that game, I think it is high time that you check that game out, because Dead Space, you can buy Dead Space at a very discounted price. It goes on sale very often, so you can check that game out. And also, you can, if you are on Xbox, you can buy the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and then with EA Play you can play Dead Space Remake. And not only Dead Space Remake, you can also play Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3 if you are on Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So, now back to today's show. So, we are going to talk about Dead Space and we are going to analyze it and cover all the aspects, according to me, that make it a masterpiece. So, what exactly does what exactly makes Dead Space Remake such a masterpiece? Now, first of all, what really happens in most of the remakes is that the new game always loses the original's value, uh, the pillars of what makes an original game a cult classic, right? Many of the games we have seen that they fall flat when they are remade. Now there are obviously some good examples as well of faithful remakes, like Resident Evil 4 remake. You had Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, and so on. But coming back to Dead Space, now what makes Dead Space Remake a masterpiece is that despite it being a remake, it remains very, very faithful to the source material, the original Dead Space, which released way back in 2008. Not only that, but it enhances that, it one ups that. That is an important aspect which makes remake a masterpiece, right? Because let's be honest, if it is a remaster or something, we only expect a little bit of bump in graphics and performance. But this is a remake, that which means that all the assets have been made from the ground up. And apart from assets, there are some scenes that have been added, and also of course the voice acting has been added, because Isaac in the original game wasn't a voiced character. So in this game, Isaac has a voice. So this in this game you feel like Isaac is acting naturally, because in Dead Space 2008, the original Dead Space, Isaac didn't have a voice. So most of the times it felt as if we are just a silent protagonist who doesn't have any brain, despite of being an engineer, to at least reply to someone or give his point of view. Anyways, so coming back to the main point is that despite this being a remake, it remains very faithful to the source material, right? That is what makes a remake or any kind of adaptation a masterpiece, right? So it does that beautifully. So right from the start you realize that, and that is why this game deserves the props that it gets. Now, what else contributes to the success of this game? The atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere in this game is top notch. Now, you cannot deny, as soon as you step out of your ship and you land on the USG Ishimura, you see that board, that lighting board that pops up on your screen, and the ambience, the sounds, right? The serious music, all of it just starts to click right from the get go. You know that shit is about to get serious in this game right from the get go, and that is what I love about this game. The atmosphere is very helpful to just soak you into this uh, desolate spaceship sort of thing where you are alone. Because let's be honest, in the first few minutes, yes, you have 3 or 4 people with you, but you get separated immediately. So the atmosphere sets up the stage beautifully. So already the remake is faithful. You see that the graphics are amazing. Then as soon as you start playing the game, the atmosphere starts to weave an amazing thread, weave an amazing experience, and then you start getting soaked into it. That is what makes it an amazing remake. Now, this being a horror game, it still gives you guns. Dead Space always had guns, but it was never about combat. right? But it still gives you the guns. Now, the problem in most of the games is that they tend to focus more on the action sometimes. Like, for example, Resident Evil 6 had that problem where the zombies were there, no doubt, but it was more oriented towards action. And I personally loved that game, but many people thought that it strayed away from the roots of Resident Evil games. But it did have that problem, and even people saw this way back in Resident Evil 5 when the game was moving away from the roots of survival horror towards action. But Dead Space Remake here makes no such mistake, guys. It remains faithful to the horror side of things, the survival horror side of things, because despite of having guns, you will be at the edge of your seat because you never know which necromorph is going to pop out of which vent. And constantly, like I always said, the atmosphere is king. Constantly there are sound cues that remind you that there are necromorphs around you. So for example, when you're walking towards you're walking on a corridor, you start to hear these sounds of the vents, the banging sounds in the vents behind you, around you, and you know something is there, but you never see them. Sometimes you do see them in the start, but most of the times you know they are there, and they can pop out at any minute, and they do pop out. So that is what makes Dead Space Remake a masterpiece, right? It is unpredictable. Yes, there are some common spots where necromorphs will spawn, but you never know which direction they're coming in. Now, audio plays an important role in this, because before you see a necromorph, you can start hearing their footsteps. Like bang, bang, bang. You hear those footsteps, then you hear the flesh, flesh of them coming. I don't know how to explain it to you, but you sort of hear this mushy sound that they make, and then you know, okay, they are behind me. And then you turn around, and yes, 100% they're there. Now, funny enough, Callisto Protocol had a similar concept, but it sort of failed in creating that tension, so to speak. It did have that tension in the earlier parts of the game, but towards the end it did fade out. Now, Dead Space Remake doesn't have that mistake. It maintains that atmosphere. Along with maintaining the atmosphere, it also maintains the scare factor. And you still have guns, right? You still have guns, you have bullets, you have your ammo, you have your different kind of weapons, you have your suit upgrades, and all those things are there, but you are still in danger because there are various types of necromorphs, right? So they keep increasing the level of combat, so to speak, slowly and gradually. So first you get obviously the main weapon, which is the plasma cutter. You start with the plasma cutter, and then you sort of see which guns do you get. The game hands you the guns as you proceed through the levels. So as we are talking about guns, let's move on to that very topic about weapon upgrades and the suit upgrades. Now, the most iconic part about Dead Space Remake has obviously been the suit, right? The Isaac suit looks so much like Iron Man. So when back in 2008, I think the first Iron Man was released, and also Dead Space Original was released. So I just had this funny comparison. At that time, I was a kid just out of school, and I used to think like, damn, like those suits look so similar. Iron Man suit and the Dead Space suit looks so similar. But at that point, Dead Space wasn't a household name, but Iron Man was starting to become a household name. So they had these two media properties have something similar to them. So the suits are iconic in Dead Space. So here you have amazing details on the suits. Again, the textures are made from the ground up. So obviously you can see that detail on Isaac suits. There are some changes made to the health indicators and the pulse kinetic indicators, and it looks amazing. Now what's more is that as you progress through the game, you start to get new suits, new upgraded version of the suits. And the most important and the most amazing part of it is that the upgrades reflect on the suit. So for example, there are levels to the suit, right? If you have played the game, you will understand it. If you haven't, then do yourself a favor and play the game whenever you get a chance to play it. So whenever you get a new suit or an upgrade for a suit, Isaac sort of enters into this chamber, and then you see a welding machine or something, a light which goes through it, and then he steps out of it and the suit is changed. So that aspect of it I really love, and I love it in all the games. Whenever games do such thing that they make changes to your armor or to your weapon when you upgrade them, that is something I really admire, and Dead Space Remake does that very well. And I'm just a fan of these kind of things, because the changes being reflected in the world really makes a difference. It immerses you more, and sort of gives you this idea that developers have put their heart into it, and it just seems so organic to have that thing reflect in the world. So this game has that. Dead Space Remake does that, and it does that with flying colors. So despite being a linear game, it gives you a lot of options, right? So you have your suit upgrades, and within suits you can upgrade your oxygen, you can upgrade your health, and all sorts of things. Then you have your weapon upgrades. Now obviously there are not many weapons in the game, but there are, I think, 7 weapons in the game, and all those 7 weapons are unique, which make them suitable for different conditions in combat. Now you might think that, oh, combat scenarios will get repetitive, and they do get repetitive, but that is the nature of all games that we play. But the uniqueness of each of the weapons that you find in this game is amazing, right? So first of all, you have the plasma cutter, which you get right from the start, and of course you can fire that horizontally and vertically and decide how do you want to cut off the limbs of the necromorphs. So that in itself is an addictive gameplay loop, sort of a mini decision that you make before shooting a gun. So that makes it more interactive, so to speak, and that really makes you just stick to the plasma cutter for most of the game. But if you choose to, you can engage with many other games. Like, there is a pulse rifle in the game. I saw many people who didn't like that pulse rifle, but I personally love that pulse rifle because it gets the job done, because it fires very fast, right? It's a rapid fire pulse rifle, so it compensates for the slow nature of the plasma cutter. So if you are overcrowded with, or if you are bombarded with enemies, you can just shoot, just pay and spray pulse rifle all over them, and then have a breathing room, and then counter attack with the plasma cutter. So you can have those two combinations, which I really love. See, these kind of things is what the interplay between the guns and the enemies makes it much more immersive for me. And you are always at the edge of your seat. You never know which necromorphs hit you. So even if you are playing the game on easy, necromorphs can bombard you, and they can kill you. Like, even on easy or a story mode, you can still get killed. I tried the game on story, easy and normal. I haven't played on higher difficulties because I have Game Pass and I want to complete as many games as I can fast. So that is the reason I didn't play on higher difficulties, but I've seen many people play on higher difficulties and they had a very amazing time with it. So cool to know that every kind of a player can get into these games. So if you are new to horror, don't be stressed about it. Just get into it for the story itself, right? Just get that scare factor. Just go on the easiest difficulty. There's no shame in that, and then you can just move on from that. And so coming back to the point of the weapons, right? So plasma cutter, we spoke about pulse rifle. There's a ripper, a weapon which which resembles the gravity gun in Half-Life. So this ripper gun has sort of a spike, a disc, a sharp disc that you can use to cut enemies strategically. It's a bit slow, I will agree, but it's a unique weapon. It is fun in itself. Then there's the flamethrower, then there is contact beam, then there is line gun, and there is force gun. Now line gun is just a different version of plasma cutter, but it's a better gun than plasma cutter if you want to specifically dismember necromorphs. So you have amazing weapon combinations. Now, one another aspect in the weapons category itself is that most of these weapons have an alternate fire mode, right? So you can fire your shotgun. You can fire one of the guns as a shotgun, and then when you use an alternate fire, it can throw a missile launcher or something. Then there is a gun where you can just shoot as a pulse rifle, and then it sort of sets up a laser trap if you fire it alternatively. So these kind of things really add to the immersion, and then this kind of these kind of options gives you the alternative to sort of make your own adventure, which is in itself a mini game that you can challenge yourself with. Now obviously the first time you play the game, you would be focusing on the plasma cutter and the simpler weapons, but as you experience the game, you can sort of replay the game with different weapon combinations and so on. Now one amazing thing about this game is that you have to manage the inventory, right? So what this game does is, for example, if you only have 2 guns in your inventory, it will give you ammo only for that gun itself. So that makes it easier for you to choose your guns accordingly and go along with it. So that is one amazing aspect which I would love to add in this game, right? So this was the weapons. Now this game also has new game plus, so if you choose to play the new game plus, you will have another suit which you can upgrade another level, and that suit looks amazing, guys. That is my favorite suit. You can play the game on new game plus and try that out for yourself. So we spoke about how it remains faithful to the source material, how the atmosphere is the king. Now despite having guns, the scare factor remains. The suit and weapon upgrades encourage exploring. So now how you will upgrade these weapons as well, so you will have to find something called as the nodes in the game. So this makes you to explore all the areas in the game. So now this is where the balance comes in. Now if you are someone who gets easily scared by these kind of games, you will genuinely be debating whether I should enter this area or not, whether I should go to this area and check it out, explore something, or should I just stick to the main path and complete the story fast so that I can done with this damn game which is stressful and horror filled, right? So that is one of the things that you will be facing. Now I genuinely am sort of not burnt out, but I have a higher degree of tolerating scares, so I tend to explore every nook and cranny even in horror games. So you will be exploring a lot in this game, but this is by no way, shape or form an open world game, but still there are some good areas that you can explore. There are some areas where you will also have to backtrack for things. That is something which is a subjective thing. You might like backtracking, some people do. I like it. If it is done good, I like it, but if it is overly done, I don't like it. But in this game it is balanced, so I love it. So that was about the positive aspects, and now obviously the last, or the some of what I can think of, one of the best aspects of the game is the graphics, right? Graphics on this game, like if you look at this game, if you look at the trailers itself, if you look at the gameplay, the graphics is top notch. Like there is no way that you can say that, oh, the graphics are mediocre or sorts. No, graphics in this game is amazing. And another amazing thing is that it runs well on Xbox Series X. Now I have played on Xbox Series X, so I can vouch for that. And from what I have seen, it runs good on PS5 as well, and on PC. I thought, and on PC, I think it had problems. If you guys can comment on that, I have not seen anything about the PC version of the game. But earlier when it launched, during the launch window, there was some issues with the frame rate or something. But on consoles, on Xbox Series X, I can vouch for it that it runs amazing on 60 frames. Now I am a guy who prefers 60 frames per second. I have done a video on that, you can check that out as well. 30 fps versus 60 fps, age old discussion of gamers, you can check that out. But graphics in this game are amazing. So if you have seen the gameplay, well, I don't need to tell you that, but it is one of the amazing aspects of the game which I think should be mentioned if we are talking about why this game is good. So these were some of the amazing aspects of the game. Now, one more thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that in the point where I mentioned the atmosphere, right? Now, there's a video that I have done on my channel. In this game, you can hear whispers, right? Somebody whispers in your ears. So not somebody, like souls of the people who had died on the ship, or just some general whispering of people who lived there, who are now dead, who are now turned into necromorphs. You hear these sort of whispering when you enter some of the areas in the game. I've done a video on that. Do check that out if you're interested. So whenever you walk in some of the corridors and you just sort of quietly soak the atmosphere, and you tend to hear these whispers more and more, right? And that makes it more creepy, right? So I am a guy who prefers to play these games alone at night, and I sort of also switch off the lights and tend to immerse myself into horror games much more like that. So I do that personally, and if you want to amplify your scare factor, do that as well. So that's how I like to play it. So when I played it for the first time, I was genuinely scared when these whispers started happening all around me, and that immersed me more. Actually, I had goosebumps, and that made me genuinely surprised that how amazing Dead Space is in terms of delivering a horror experience. So these whispers are not random. As we have not touched on the story, I think I would like to cover that aspect as well. Now, the story in this game is also something which is interesting and not an afterthought, right? So the story revolves around a marker which is in the ship and which is on the planet as well. And this marker sorts of plays with your head, right? It makes you go crazy over time, as more and more as you get to uh, the more you get exposed to this marker. It fucks with your brain. It shows you vision, it makes you hear things. So the whispers sort of start slowly, and they are benign at the beginning, but then they become invasive at certain point of the game. And I won't spoil anything, but yeah, so the marker is uh, the central point of the story, and it is interesting how it plays with you psychologically as well. And yeah, so story is amazing, and it is not thrown in your face with too many cutscenes. The cutscenes are good, they are short, and they are directed very well. They are similar to God of War, the first God of War, the first, I mean, the rebooted God of War, where you had these single shot scenes. There are no cuts in between, so that really immerses you in the scene and in the story. So again, one of the positive aspects of Dead Space is the story itself. Now, we went on and on about the positive aspects of the game, right? What makes the game amazing, in my opinion. Now, let's talk about just one thing that I didn't like in this game, or I wouldn't say didn't like, because that would be too much, because it's not something that hindered my experience, but it sort of stood out like a sore thumb, right? Maybe you feel different, of those who, if you're listening and if you have played the game, I don't know, you might agree or disagree on this, is that the objectives, the mission design seems to revolve too much around repairing USG Ishimura, right? Like when you start, you have to repair this. Then you go into the medical bay, you fetch a hydrazine tank. Then you go there, you repair a certain grav bay. Then you do this, you have a different set of things to repair. Then you repair the satellites. Then you orient the satellites. Now, of course, it is not the same. It is presented in a different way. There are different set of actions you're going to be doing. There are some puzzles as well. But the mission structure, right? I hope you're getting what I'm trying to convey, that the mission structure is a bit similar, and towards the end it kind of gets a bit repetitive. It starts to get repetitive, but it isn't repetitive. But it is something that I felt should be addressed. But that is I'm just nitpicking at this point, because this game is not perfect, I would say, but this game is a perfect blueprint of how survival horror games should be. And especially sci-fi horror games should take inspiration from Dead Space in a good way. Callisto Protocol tried that, but it couldn't execute it. But I love that game in a separate way. I have a separate spot for that game. I love that game, and you would know why in one of my videos. But Dead Space is amazing, right? Of whatever I played, the only negative point I could come up with is this, then you know this game is amazing, right? And even this negative point that I just spoke about, it is not that negative, right? It's just something which I felt that pulled me back from the experience, right? Maybe if there would have been some different objectives or some different sections, some space sections. There are some space sections where you go outside the ship and do some repairs. There's also some shooting that you do. But I just wanted a bit more of the space thing, just to avoid this repairing different parts of the USG Ishimura. But well, it is what it is. It is not that of a big negative, in my opinion. So that was it about this video. Now, this is my first analysis video, so, and this is uncut. These are my raw opinions about the game. So I don't know how this video is going to turn out. This is my first video where I am sort of doing a long form analysis of the game. Now, I am not sure how this will turn out, but this is raw and unedited, because that is how I want this thing to be. I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that you love Dead Space as much as I did, because see, one thing that I really hate about EA is that they are discontinuing this franchise, right? So you can watch another video that I did about Dead Space a few weeks ago, is about how EA has cancelled Dead Space. So if you didn't know about this news, then it will hurt you that Dead Space is cancelled, right? Dead Space series is not continuing. EA has decided to just throw it away, despite of selling 3 million copies. Now you can check out the video that I did in detail, and if you want to know my thoughts on that, and if you want to share your frustrations, feel free to comment on this video that why did they discontinue Dead Space. I personally hate that decision. I hate it with my guts, but it is what it is. This is the world we are living in. I guess EA just wants live service games, so that is all you have right now. So, anyways, this is a sad ending to the Dead Space franchise, because Dead Space Remake really was a masterpiece. It is a masterpiece in my opinion. So maybe it will come back soon. I have my fingers crossed, but as of now, there is no green signal to that. Now here's hoping that their new Iron Man game, which EA Motive is working on, hopefully that game does well, and maybe EA has a change of mind and they greenlight Dead Space again. But until then, there is no hope for Dead Space 2 to come back. So that will be it about Dead Space. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, this short analysis that I did on Dead Space. There are not many things to talk about in this game because the game is amazing, right? There is not much to discuss in terms of negatives or positives. The positives are strong, the negatives are negligent. That's why Dead Space Remake is a masterpiece for me. So I hope you guys enjoy. Keep gaming, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video on the NiKo show. Bye guys, take care.